all of us, most of us,
Yes, sure.
are either employers or employees. And so we have a role to play in, or rather, we will be impacted by this conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
We want to talk about the productivity of employees. And with us today is Simon Kamau. He's a certified human resource practitioner, and he's also the executive director of OptiPro Limited. Allow us to bring him to you shortly. And you can also follow this conversation online at Hope FM live across social media. Hope, that is Twitter or X, and Facebook and YouTube as well. Share the link with as many people as you can, and also drop your comments and questions, the way.
Yeah.
If you're wondering about your own productivity as an employee, or the productivity of your employees, if you are an employer, then this is the time to ask those questions. Allow us to bring him so that he can introduce himself. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Good to have you.
Pleasure.
If you can move just a bit more closer to your microphone.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, tell us a little about yourself and this practice of human resource.
I'm excited to being here.
All right.
We thank God for the opportunity in life. My name is Simon Kamau. I'm a human resource practitioner by training and practice. For about 15 years, thereabout, I've been into this craft. My experience spans in a multifaceted environment. In that I've been actually had an opportunity to come in and impact on organizations in various industries, be it telecommunication, service industry, manufacturing industry, processing and production, etc., etc.
All right.
So really, I'm grateful for this particular opportunity once more, and we look forward to educating and interacting with Hope FM listeners wherever they are on this particular topic.
Amazing. It's good that you said you have worked with, multifaceted organizations. So, what have you seen in the, in the industry, if I should call it so? What have you noticed or realized?
Thank you very much. I think what we need to really appreciate is that the reason or the objective why an enterprise or an organization exists is purely to draw value. But then, over the time now, we've really had quite a lot of disconnect between the employer's expectations and that of the employee. And purely, if you're to assess an organization from a perspective of value, then you're reporting this in the form of productivity. And this is actually to mean how much value does the inputs of this particular employee have or contribute to the main vision of the organization, in this case being profitability or return on investment. So really the disconnect here will represent itself in the form or the perspective that as much as the employer has set up this particular enterprise with a single objective to really have an impact in the society, looking at it from an economic point of view, but then how comes we are still struggling to realize this particular single objective in the business, which is becoming really a big concern altogether. And you will actually touch what the impact has been, looking into how many industries are closing shops every day, the unemployment rate in Kenya, and of course the big question here will be, is it true that we do not have employment or jobs in this country? Or really, is it a discussion and a conversation around whether the people and the employers as at a collaboration stage are in a position to bring about that value to any given opportunity within an operating or working environment. Yes.
Wow, you touched on a very important point, Simon. Is it true? Actually, just answer the question. Is it true that the level of unemployment is high? Or there's a problem somewhere? And what's the problem?
Jobs?
Yeah.
The reality is we have jobs. Okay?
Wow, okay.
We have jobs. Okay? But then, the biggest gap is now when you look at an employee being the most critical asset in the organization at capabilities level. And what is it that I'm implying to? Each one of us went to school. What we acquired is technical academia. But then to convert the same into industry-based knowledge, that is where the conversation sits. Because really, the conversation shifts now from your own technical academia to the skill sets that you process. Of course, you build the same through experience over a couple of years or time. And eventually, that is what will now come in and define you as a competent employee or as a competent resource within an organization. In that now you can come in and demonstrate value out of that competence to achieve organization key results. And the organization key results here, we need to be very clear. These are now the objectives and goals of the organizations at the point of coming into inception, that is the formation. And equally for those now who have been into existence, the goals and objectives keeps changing, and they keep revolving for considering also every other enterprise or business has to grow in terms of its expectation, expand its pool in terms of product and services. So really the jobs are there, but then what competence do you have to support that organization key result or vision altogether, you as an employee? So
you mentioned, sorry to cut you short, you mentioned that, this will be built over with time, but then there is not even the entry point, because I have come from school as a graduate, right? I am expected to get into the workforce and deliver.
Yes.
And you have clearly told us that there's the academia, there's what I'm taught in school, but there's the real thing.
Yes.
So where do I practice?
We need to be really very honest and candid, right, in this conversation. More often we are opting for shortcuts as employees. Immediately we come out of college or universities or even tertiary institutions, the immediate focus becomes now, how fast do I make money?
From this, from the 4 years of training.
From the 4 years
from
of
the
training.
papers now to money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question, how do I make money, is what really does not feature in terms of now your own expertise at that particular point. So if you're an engineer, you will want to come in and convince me that from the onset you're in a position to come in and carry out a certain scope within an engineering field. If you look at it now from the perspective, let's say, for example, of fiber designs and planning, right from the university, you want to come and imagine that you can come in and design a particular network without you necessarily going through that vigorous process of trainings. And if you look at it now in terms of the expectations, you're not really coming in to kind of apply that what you picked in school end to end. There are industry specifics that are required in this particular responsibility.
Right.
For example, if you look at it now from a specific requirement, you talk of a connect master. This is where you come in and upload your own designs and you pass over to the client. The client has to go through approve. Then you get into now figuring out how do you go into implementation. But what is it that is happening? Right from university or college, and I want to come and convince the employer that I can actually make use of the connect master here and then and on the spot. But really, do I have that know-how? Do I really have that on the job experience?
So, Mr. Simon, just to cut you short, sorry. So, where does this graduate go to immediately after school?
The right landing point will be that at personal level, we need to be truthful. And being truthful is when you come out and appreciate, yes, indeed, you've gone to school, but then you need to go through into a training. You need to actually undergo a training within that particular specific field. Then going through that particular training, of course, there is now the focus point in that you're in a position now to come in and convert between what you learned in class and that what the industry requires. So we need not to jump the process.
So Simon, you're saying internships and attachment programs and such kind of things.
Yes.
Volunteering. Even.
Yes. You'll be surprised. People are given these opportunities to come out and learn and also demonstrate that indeed they can bring about value in an organization. But then what comes on the table is what does this opportunity come along with? Are there any facilitations? Are there any payments? Do we have any salary attached to these opportunities, etc., etc.? But then we miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you're in a position now to come in and build your own self in terms of that know-how, and you gain that expertise to sit on the HR table and now start the conversation of the onboarding from the perspective that now I can do it competently. How does the package look like? So the package is coming way before you acquire the right knowledge, skills, and the competence to carry out that particular craft. So if you look at it now from the productive point of view, you have a graduate who graduated like 5 years ago. They have not gone through any training on the job. Neither have they come out to volunteer and put their own time and mind into a specific responsibility to learn on the job. But then luckily they come in and land into an opportunity that really does not so much push and require for you to come in from the inception to demonstrate that indeed you have that, you can undertake that particular craft through your own expertise. So what happens from that stage? You don't know what you're supposed to do. At the end of the day, the employer expects value, and this particular value, we need to really be very specific. The value here does not come by the way you like me, or the way I turn myself out to be your errand boy, etc., etc. But really, it has to be represented through numbers. It's a quantitative conversation as opposed to qualitative. So, if you look at productivity conversation, both formal and informal, we need to appreciate the bottom line of every other enterprise or business is profits. The reverse will be losses. If you're not in losses, you'll either go under liquidation, receiverships. You might be lucky to really be merged or acquired by your own competitors, etc., etc. But really, was that the main vision of this particular enterprise? So if you look at productivity, we need not to confuse it with working.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
We need not to confuse it with working. We really need to be very distinct. Working can actually be analyzed and reported by how many man hours you put across a certain task or role.
Right.
But then the value is what now transitions
to productivity.
To product is actually now what is a byproduct of being productive.
Okay.
So if you have to look at it now from a profit and loss perspective, at what point do we start drawing value? A profit and loss in terms of its own structure. Number one, at the top you have the revenue. Revenue will come in by way of us selling goods, products, services. You could also come in and have intellect, like the media. You have a lot of it. So how much income are you generating from that particular transaction or sales?
Okay.
Then from the revenue, you move in now downward to the cost of goods. Okay, these are the direct inputs, the raw material. And now when you move now to productivity, you have now the direct labor that contributes to that service or product. So if you're now to look at it now downward, you'll now be picking your own revenue, you less that cost of goods, you arrive now at the gross profit. That is the amount that you have at this particular point in time, up to that stage. But then don't forget, you also have a build-up of a P&L in the form of operating expenses. Okay, the operating expenses will now come in and now factor in the indirect, electricity, indirect labor, and indirect labor in any organization or institution will now be coming in from that support team, which comes in to support the operations, etc., etc.
All right. So, Simon, you mentioned that this is earlier. You mentioned that it's a global issue. It's a global problem that we have.
Yes.
How bad is it? And then what should be done?
Every day we sit and watch our news, at any given time, we are discussing about government exporting a lot of labor.
Yeah.
Globally. So in Kenya, we will wake up and we are told we have bilateral agreements with Canada, Mozambique, etc., etc. But then, when you look at it now from that perspective, the biggest gap here is not like people have not gone to school.
We have.
Okay?
We really have.
They've gone to school.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But to bridge between that education quality and the reality outside here in the industry, that is what now makes you competent in terms of how well you can come in and demonstrate value when we look at you now from a human resource perspective.
Okay.
Let me just cut you short, Mr.
Yes.
Simon. You're
Yes.
talking about the education we get in school,
Yes.
and now the conversion to what is on ground.
Yes.
Does it mean there's a disconnect between the education system and the labor force in Kenya?
There is a very huge disconnect because honestly, you will not be surprised today to have a professor or a doctor who cannot come in and demonstrate to you what, for example, cost governance is. The efficiency within maximization of resources in a given environment. Be it power, be it on people, be it on financials, tools, equipment, etc., etc. So there is too much foundation that is being created to read and pass those examinations. But then when you come in now and bridge the same gap on what exactly is required in the industry, they are not really speaking to each other. I know the government is trying to correct the same through the CBC, starting now with the young kids.
Yes.
And of course the same conversation has now found itself into universities through the Commission of University Education.
Yes.
But then if you figure out when the education system changed in Kenya, it was about 1984 when the curriculum moved back to 844 system. So we are talking of almost 40 years of that burden which is already with us out here, and that's exactly where the problem is.
Oh, now, just from where you sit as a human resource practitioner,
Yes.
what needs to be done exactly to, solve this whole issue of the disconnect between the workforce and the education?
The reality is, you cannot tell someone who finished school like 20 years ago to go back to school. So really, the human resource practitioners have now a responsibility to transition themselves in mindset, to also perceive these people as human beings, and equally now fit themselves in their own shoes in terms of this gap. So what really do we invest a lot of our time in? We need to seriously venture into on-the-jobs trainings that are not only one-off per this specific role, but equally gradual and 360 in terms of bringing in all stakeholders within the organization, specifically the employees, to come in and be trained on how best to interpret an organization from the perspective of an entrepreneur. So really, what I'm trying to mean is that at the top here, we had mentioned about an organization key results or goals or and objectives. But from the representation of now the human resources at capabilities level, how best can we come and understand and interpret and break down and crystallize and bring about foundations in the form of systems, in the form of processes, procedures, and breaking tasks and roles into achievable roles to marry and agree with that particular vision of the organization. So we really have to work so hard and engage the employees as much as we can to really think and figure out what contributions are they making at the end of the day when you look at an organization at singularity of purpose.
All right.
Yes.
Just hold it right there, Simon.
Thank
we need
you.
to take a very quick break, but we'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away.
Thank you.
Revolution is taking place on Saturday Vibes. Brand new. Tell another teenager to tune in. A show for communities with exciting dance music and inspiring sessions. Vibes. Vibes. Simon gospel fisherman Simon kujipiga konde Simon lakini muziki tunacheza hata tukiwa wagonjwa tu una dance kimoyo moyo una dance kimoyo it's a game changer Saturday vibes with David King Saturdays from 10 a.m. Listen and live.
Forgiving others is one thing, but when we are faced with the need to forgive ourselves, it's another battle altogether.
How do you forgive yourself when you let yourself
We can
down?
continue on with
was
that
absolutely
thought.
unforgivable.
Amaliza kutuambia what
What needs to be
we shall
done.
fully unpack
Yeah.
God's truth on the issue of forgiving
that's the real issue.
ourselves.
actually that's the
I can see that the conversation is getting to the real issues.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. You know, you list it in a problem statement perspective, but
Yeah.
when it comes now to breaking it down, it will connect as one.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So let's just build on that then. We may not even get so much into the script
Yeah,
that we have,
yeah, sure.
but if we have to, we can refer. Itakuwa nini moja? Itakuwa 5 minutes to before this.
What do you do?
No, we have to get in. Because to get the music, we will need
You will lose time.
a lot of time. All right, we're getting back.
All right.
Right, welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with the conversation today on employee productivity. And if you ask me, so many, pertinent issues are coming up here.
Yeah, sure. Very true.
And I love what Simon was saying, and we'll allow him to continue with that thought,
Yes,
Simon.
yes.
You were mentioning about the HR now coming in and trying to bridge the gap.
Yes.
Please carry on.
Thank you. You know, when you look at this particular conversation, you'll actually note is both a topical issues and a concept altogether. A topical issue from the perspective of the fact that HR has evolved over time, from the era of personnel administration, when you'll get scolded to out of reporting at work 10 minutes past time, regrouping to reason on how easy to break a task and make it more exciting, will be converted into ganging up against an organization or the HR. And of course, the militarization of this particular process. More of a time when you are starting off to work, you will spot your boss in the HR department, and within not second you will have disappeared from the scene. So it was more like a militarization conversation from the HR office. But then we need to appreciate there is a lot of evolution where the human resource practitioners come in and look at an organization in terms of structures, on how best you come in and create structures and processes that mechanize how simple and easy it is to actually break down a role or a task at any given time. But then when you look at this particular conversation, you'll actually be wondering, how then is it topical once again? We understand we are into digitization era, where people or value is now attached to what is it that you're bringing on the table. as opposed to how many man hours you are putting
Yeah.
in a particular task. And of course, this has highly been propelled by post-COVID, when we really came in to think again on the field of work in terms of our physical reporting to the offices. So really, there is a lot of mental shift that is required on the part of the human resource practitioners to really understand the business from the perspective of its own objectives, build capacity on in the form of now the structures and policy, and equally continuously improve the employees' capabilities through trainings, continuous engagements, recognition, and coming up with a wellness program. But then, at what point do you structure productivity conversation within an organization? Really, the conversation happens, the value add is actually drawn at the point of recruitment or onboarding this particular employee.
Okay.
It will be important to note personality in the form of attitudes and skill set of an employee or a human resource are very crucial when it comes to productivity, because
Alright.
they will really be a determinant.
You said
Personality.
personality.
Which is a representation of attitude,
Yeah.
mindset, okay,
Okay.
and equally now the skill sets. It is a key determinant of what competencies you would expect to draw from a specific individual in the form of an employee within an organization.
All right.
But then when you look at it now from the organization perspective, the trade that the organization is in, and of course the culture of that organization becomes quite critical within any given time. I can give you an example. If today we are in a milk processing plant at the factory floor, you would require to really focus more on quality, and of course the warehousing of the finished goods and the machine technicians, because there could be breakdown anytime. But then, what is the real scenario here? While you're expected to bring in someone who has the expertise within those particular lines, the truth is the opposite. So you will pick a scenario where this particular machine technician or this particular quality controller is an agronomist. Okay? But then we are in the trade of processing milk.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
So the conversation when it comes to productivity starts both top and bottom.
So you mean there is some level of misplaced skills?
A lot. Quite a lot.
Right.
Okay.
Quite a lot. An agronomist will fit very well when it comes to the positions of a CEO, because what is it that is required of a CEO? One is that they're in a position to build relationships, negotiate with suppliers, business partners, etc., engage the customers for more businesses, and get to understand what are their pain points, manage risks when you look at the organization end to end, responsible for operations, efficiency, etc. So they're not really built up within a foundation of monotony of skill in the form of an agronomist. So at the top there, they'll fit very well. But comes now to the actual craft or trade, when you have these agronomists, then what are we saying? And that's a very serious observation within enterprise. And how is it happening? We as HR, we leave out the focus of the organization along the fence or the perimeter.
Okay.
And when we occupy these offices, the competence no longer matters. What matters is how best I know you, how well are we related. So I'm in a position to bring in this agronomist to be in charge of quality, knowing very well that these people cannot actually manage to carry out a quality test of this particular product to ascertain how compliant it is. So really, from the basics, the trade of an organization will really matter on what exactly competence are you onboarding in this particular organization.
All right.
And the craft at the bottom carries that CEO in terms of vision. They reflect on risk, that you should have a right quality controller who is competent so as to not to expose the organization against this risk. You have a machine technician who should always carry out routine maintenance and repairs to avoid breakdown and incur on customer inconveniences, losses in terms of man hours, production, etc., etc. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Just hold it right there. Let's
Okay.
take the business. We'll be back in a few.
Thank you.
That's good. That's
Thank
some
you.
good information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Players has unveiled investment opportunities tailor-made to the players in the tourism and wildlife sector. KDC has committed to providing corporate finance, infrastructure finance, business support, and advisory services to medium
Okay, just volume your microphone, your mic hapo hivyo. Could it be too loud?
sector. Speaking during the
Not really. I've tried to see the sound.
Why the echo then?
outlined the corporation's strategic packages that will facilitate
It seems like this is not a conversation we can have
In one day,
Yeah.
it's not enough.
It's not. It's long.
it's very low.
And unfortunately, we have seen industries collapse because of productivity.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes. Look at Naivas's,
Mhm.
Taskis,
Yeah.
Chumis. It was purely the issue of, yes, you talk about governance, but if you had a people who will be vocal
Yeah.
and demonstrate that indeed we are about to sing, then what are we saying?
1.47 trillion shillings.
You know,
Yes.
it cannot be a one-day session.
I see. I see. It's a
No.
whole
It's a
topic to
big
handle.
conversation. Yes. Yes.
We'll see how to wrap it up because now we'll be having very few minutes.
It's okay.
We'll see how to wrap it up, then maybe we can pick up this conversation some other time.
Yeah, sure, sure. We'll assume we've just broken the
Yeah.
news outside here.
Yes.
Then we'll be glad to come back.
Yeah,
And
sure.
now break it down because I know if you look at it now from a P&L perspective.
Time is pretty much well spent and we have a lot to tackle, so allow us to carry on. You were on a point, Simon. If we can carry on.
Yes.
From the point of hiring,
Yes.
hiring of these skills,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. So what I was trying to bring out is if you look at an organization, its own activities, be it mid, short, or long term, the biggest carrier, irrespective of how many business opportunities stands along our way, strategic direction that we are going to undertake, and how much businesses we need to onboard at any given time is typically dependent on the quality of the workforce that you have in an organization.
Right.
The quality of the workforce is not actually limited to the fact that yes, they came in green, but then the conversation will be from the recruitment point. Did you get it? Did you at least, not even a matter of getting it,
All right.
Yeah.
did you at least get it right? If you got it right at the recruitment stage, in the course of onboarding, how much did you create synergy and collaboration of that employee's mindset with the organization goals and objectives? So did you sync that particular enterprise or institution trade or craft in the mindset of this particular?
So, Mr. Simon, you're talking of orientation and having the new employer now carry the vision.
Yes,
All right.
from day one. That's a day one rule. But really, what is it that happens? We have an assumption that onboarding, orientation and induction entails you showing an employee where they sit, the clock rooms, etc., etc.
Yes.
The biggest conversation here is that these people, at least for the first 30 to 60 days, and the labor laws is very clear. The probation period is about 90 days.
Right.
So people will be wondering, why do we have a 90 period to really get to ascertain how much Simon can do in an organization? What you would realize is that there is a lot of incubation that takes place during this particular 90 days.
All right.
But towards now the tail end of the 90 days, 2 weeks too, you're in a position now to evaluate and tell what is Simon in a position to at least deliver what we hired him to do. You know?
Yes.
So the discussion on productivity now falls back to that particular decision you undertook to onboard this particular resource. That onboarding session through trainings and creation of awareness and walking them through the company history, the formation, the cycles that this business has undergone, and what is the intended goal and objective, and what exact space should they occupy if we should one day celebrate as an organization. So it's a day one rule.
Right.
But 3-4 years down the line, we come in and dismiss an employee on accounts of poor performance. When they land you to court, the immediate conversation becomes, was this employee facilitated to understand and get to know how he or she should carry out his role or responsibility at any given time? Was he at least brought up to that level? So indeed, if you really assumed that you have hired an expert,
Yeah.
you will bring in an expert, but the culture is different in
sure.
that particular organization. They are used to an open culture where you're speaking your mind, expressing yourself, but here you have to come in and follow a certain hierarchy when it comes now to you dispensing your own duties, making decisions, etc., etc. So really, how you compound that particular process between 0 to 90 days is a determinant of how you win in terms of values, win against litigations, and actually now propel the brand as a reputable institution for anybody to come and work with. Customers' confidence will come in, and of course, these people being the ambassador of your own institution or organization, they'll keep talking about it everywhere and anytime they interact with people. And you will imagine now, if you are to carry out a survey, how much that would mean. So really, when you see brands outside here being spoken about and people going vocal, they will always have a story to tell as to how the conversation happens in there, as to how the culture is, as to how leadership is all about, as to how opportunities for growth are actually created, as to how respect is actually shown to these particular employees, as to how they are encouraged to keep on being creative and innovative and change the world of work within that particular environment. And that honors of proof is on the HR.
Right.
The HR hires the line managers. The line manager supervises these new recruits. So indeed, there should be a unification of communication and focus between the HR and these line managers on how best to bring about value from this particular employee.
I'm
Yes.
loving that we are, laying quite some emphasis on the HR.
Yes.
And probably we'll have another session now so
Thank
that we
you.
can now
Talk
talk
about-
about our roles as the employees. But still on that issue, I'm wondering, Simon, there's a HR probably who's listening today, or a CEO, a founder, and they realize that they actually, first of all, hired wrong.
Yes.
Whoever they placed in that position, was not fit for the role.
Yes.
So how do they, go around that? How do they work around that? So that, because you mentioned that lack of employee productivity is part of what is seeing the closure of many
Yes.
organizations and
Yes.
companies.
Yes.
So how do they mitigate that without necessarily firing this person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me start from where you've left. During the personnel era, that is personnel administration, hiring will have been the immediate action if you are not performing. But we are in the
Firing.
Firing. That
Yes.
is, sorry,
Yes.
firing and dismissal,
Yeah.
separation. But then we are in the era where both labor laws and the HR field has really evolved. HR has become more strategic as to how it comes in and works an organization end to end. And equally now, when you look at now the labor laws, they actually make it very tedious and almost impossible to separate with an employee, more so on accounts of firing.
Okay.
So really, what is it that is left for us? We really have to come back to the drawing board and customize to train, focusing specifically on each and every employee's areas of weaknesses.
So when hiring, we tailor make them. They are tailor made to suit
Yes,
what they are being hired for.
yes.
All right.
But then we miss the point when we generalize a training or an empowerment process. In that, other than focusing on myself as a HR, you're now focusing on me as an engineer. Typically because this organization is within telecommunication industry,
All right.
and the majority are engineers.
Right.
So how much time will it take to convert me? I will never be converted.
Right.
But assuming you got me within my areas of weakness in HR, maybe I'm weak in trainings, I'm weak in analyzing data to give insights for decision making. I'm also very weak in terms of relationship management. So you really have to customize on what exactly am I suffering from that is making the organization breathe. But of course, you've asked also a pertinent issue. What again is the responsibility of the employee? The employee equally has a duty of care, because as much as you have that minimum basic, you must equally demonstrate that you have an attitude and a mindset that is open and willing to learn in the speed and rate that the organization is propelling you to. So you cannot just sit pretty and solid, stuck where you are, locking your mind, not opening up yourself to opportunities, either within that particular level you are in, or even in terms of growth upward. So it's a two-way traffic.
All right.
If you're not trainable, if you have your attitude and mindset wrong, then obviously there will have to be a separation point. Yes.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yes.
Time fills us. We have just
Thank
2
you.
minutes
2 minutes.
Thank you.
to wrap it up, Simon.
Thank you.
If someone will hear you for the last time today,
Uh-huh.
they will never hear you again.
Yes.
How do we close this conversation?
For me, productivity is not a general talk. It's actually a quantitative talk, and it's actually at that particular point when we come in to draw the value of the investment we've made. When you look at the people, and equally now the organization having being in place to come in and attack and provides a service or a solution or a product within a certain industry. But then we need to appreciate that productivity will always be realized when we really define the value add at the onboarding stage, and we marry between that business on the industry they are in and what skills and competencies are required, more so focusing on personality, their attitude and their mindset.
All right.
That's I think that's how we can close that conversation.
All right. For
Yes.
now,
For now.
we put a pause on
For
it
now, yes.
because this really has to continue.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Simon. Thank you
you.
for the
Thank you.
insights. We appreciate you. And thank you so much for everyone that was joining us this morning on this conversation.